There we go.
Hi, everyone. Elizabeth Briety here, and welcome and thank you so much for your willingness to be with us today. I'm going to begin by sharing my screen and, oh, there's some little one, and get back to Jen and her discussion with us today, which will be on the University of Delaware's Applied, Practicing, and Engaged Anthropology minor or concentration. So Jen, go right ahead.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for having me today. I'm Jen Trivedi. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology and a core faculty member at the Disaster Research Center here at the University of Delaware. Our anthropology department here focuses on undergraduate students, while individual faculty members also work and engage with graduate students in a wide range of other departments across campus. I'm speaking here today on behalf of myself and Dr. Carla Giron Montero, who is herself a professor in the Department of Anthropology and also holds joint appointments in the departments of Latin American and Iberian Studies, Africana Studies, and Women in Gender Studies. Both of us are cultural and applied anthropologists. And in the past several years, our department has been quite fortunate to have expanded significantly, adding 5 new faculty hires so far, who have added to the depth and breadth of the department, expanding our research and teaching offerings related to issues like migration, health, the environment, and others. And with that, while there's long been an interest with applied, practicing, and engaged anthropology with our existing faculty and students, there had not yet been a sort of critical mass of faculty to work on proposals like this until now. And this growth and student demand has been reflected in our changing understanding and evolving understanding of what students want to do with their degrees once they graduate. What courses they want to take while they're here, and how we can recognize those efforts with new degree options. So recently, our department has begun discussions about how do we expand our degree options to allow students to enhance either their anthropology majors and minors, or to enhance other degrees with specialized focus components. And so this isn't just the applied, practicing, and engaged minor concentration that we're in discussions on. So just this week, for example, the College of Arts and Sciences Faculty Senate voted to approve 3 other new minors, one on culture, medicine, and health, one on human rights and global instabilities, and one on material culture, technology, and design. And we really see a lot of these as interwoven with one another and supporting each other. During this time, Carla and I have been working on developing plans for the applied, practicing, and engaged anthropology minor concentration, which we really need to figure out a shorter title for. In an effort to support students who are interested in taking methods and theories and concepts from applied anthropology and applying them to practical problems out in the world, various topics and their majors and careers, whatever they are. Our ultimate hope is that in offering this concentration or minor or both, is that we'll be able to better prepare students to do such work and simultaneously to help them graduate with a degree that demonstrates their knowledge of this approach to potential employers. We've already been in communication with Dr. Briety and Dr. Nolan regarding feedback on our initial draft of the plan, which was hugely helpful and we're deeply thankful. And we're working on adapting their guidance into the proposal now. And from our initial draft, we've been working with ideas to better prepare students for a future in applied and practicing fields. And to use those skills and knowledge in whatever career they find themselves, drawing from teaching and research across the anthropological subfields that are currently offered in our program, and with specifically applied classes. So numerous courses we already offer in social and cultural anthropology already incorporate some applied work in different ways through lectures, activities, and assignments that we've seen as similar to other applied anthropology degree programs at comparable universities. And the courses we offer in biological anthropology, especially when we include medical and health and biocultural related classes, similarly offer a range of relevant options. The courses we offer in archaeology are a little bit more limited, but several of the ones that we do have already start to engage with these really applied and practicing questions. So we're hoping that students will be required to take courses from across the different subfields to really introduce them to these practical questions across a range of different perspectives. And our goal with this is really to make sure that students walk away with a fundamental knowledge of applied, practicing, public, and engaged anthropology, including its own history and development over time, how it's used in different capacities in academia and in government work, NGOs, and the private sector, and to help students practice skills on the ground and specific skills we see as related to applied work. We plan and hope to work with the UD Career Services Office here, the Washington Association for the Practice of Anthropology, and hopefully the Commission as well, to offer workshops and other resources that already exist to help students improve skills ranging from workplace preparation and applications, project design, development, management, presentation skills, and technical writing skills. This strain of skills focus in particular emerged from our ongoing review of literature rooted in surveys of anthropologists who work in a variety of fields, academic and applied, and their discussions of the skills that they learned in their education and ones that they didn't, but are using in their careers day to day. So we want to make sure that those are also being deeply embedded throughout this. So any additional feedback from the Commission about our plans would be tremendously appreciated as we're moving forward and refining this. And what we hope to gain from working with the Commission is in part that knowledge, including information about resources that might be helpful for students to use and access in their education and moving throughout their career. We hope to connect with members of the Commission in different ways, including collaborations. I know that Dr. Guerin Montero's course throughout the semester helped introduce students to practicing anthropology when Suanna Selby Crowley became a consultant in it, and she's spoken very highly of that. We hope that Commission members can speak in our courses and that students can have mentoring relationships or internships with them, with a wide range of the fantastic practitioners present in the Commission. And we're hoping that this will help us bring the practicing world into our classrooms in different ways. We hope to use the resources available already on the Commission's website to identify gaps in our own program now and as we move forward with it, to make sure that it's constantly changing to reflect needs, as well as in classes and program development to help our students understand applying anthropology better and to develop their own projects. This may include, if possible, helping students work with the Commission to develop new ideas, research, and projects that could potentially be stored in the future on the Commission's site to then make that information itself more available to others, while also helping our own students learn through the process. And in addition, we hope to develop and continue a working relationship with the Commission that would enable us to support our students in developing their own relationship in applied anthropology and anthropology outside of academia in a lot of different ways. So that's what I've got for now, but I'm happy to answer questions as well before I have to hop off for another meeting. So thank you guys very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
And
I just like to say, if anyone has specific comments for Jen right now, if you would please put them in the chat, because we do have quite a bit to cover in this meeting. I think that's probably the best way to handle it, Jen, and then I'll save the chat so that you can have access to any comments from people specifically. And then
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and then they can also contact you separately.
Please feel free to email me.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, thank you so much for your work on this. All right, now we're going to move into the area of class projects. And the first up is Andrew Walsh and Jade Newber. They come from Western University, which is in London, Ontario. not too far from the border with the US. So Andrew and Jade, take it away.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So thanks everyone for listening to this. We'll keep it short. So this was some of you might remember, I think it was in the summer, Elizabeth and Ryle put out a call for people interested in maybe collaborating on some projects in their classes. I've been teaching a capstone fourth-year course for the last couple of years, focusing on a lot of the same issues that the Commission is addressing, helping students or encouraging students to think about how their degrees and their training in anthropology is relevant beyond the university. And so with Elizabeth and Ryle's invitation, I proposed that we could do something with them, and they proposed a project for us, which we carried out. It was a very simple project, and in a way, it's had a couple of different outcomes. Where we can show you some of or we'll show you one example of the prototypes we have. And Jade, who's with me here, who is a student in the class and co-led the project with me as part of her capstone project, I should say. So her presentation here is actually part of her work in the course. We've got that. She will talk a bit about student learning, but maybe one of the more useful things I could talk about is the process that we followed to mount this project within a course, because it was kind of complicated. The goal that Elizabeth and Ryle gave us was to identify examples of anthropology being basically effectively applied in business, in nonprofits, in government, in a wide range of fields, and then to identify them and then figure out a way of communicating those cases to a broader audience. So what we began with a broad range of cases to consider, drawn from the most recent edition of Profiles of Anthropological Practice, as well as journals like Human Organization, Practicing Anthropology, Applied Anthropology and Public Health, and other sources that feature these kinds of case studies. There's lots of them to choose from, which was great. There was no shortage of cases to consider. So we had a bunch of cases that students could choose from, and students ended up submitting in the class, it's a small class, a total of 28 case reports. To collect these case reports, I created a Google form that students could use so that it was just an easy way of tracking and following along with the case reports as they were coming in, rather than having them submit each one individually, and actually allowed us, through then transferring those forms to spreadsheets, an easy way of organizing them in the stages that came. Following the collection of these 28 case reports, we then had students working in small groups, deliberate over the cases. Obviously, they had read them, then they read one another's case reports, and then they talked about, how well these cases actually met the criteria set up by the Commission. And in the end, we came up with a total of 9 cases that we wanted to focus on, especially in a presentation that Elizabeth was kind enough to join us for in person in London, and Ryle joined us on Zoom as well, where students presented these cases, and we also presented some prototypes of the kinds of communications that we wanted to potentially use in communicating them to a broader public. So here's I just asked Elizabeth to include this image of what the Google case report included. As I say, the Google form just really made this quite simple. And if anyone's interested, I'm more than happy to share it with you. It asked students very simple questions, which I think really helped them get the most out of the cases they were studying. What was the problem being addressed in the case? What was the nature of the anthropological approach being taken to the problem, and what were the results? Now, I should specify, the results weren't always, oh, the problem was solved. And that was actually an important part of the discussions that we ended up having about, what we can do and when we apply anthropological methods and skills. So I can show you, I think the next one, yeah. So this is just
Yep.
an example of we had thought originally that we would just produce PDFs that could be put on the commission's website. But it was after, some discussions with various people more knowledgeable of social media than we are. Jade and I decided to go ahead and encourage the class to also produce materials that could be shared that were suited to sharing on, for example, Instagram. Matt is here. I see Matt was kind enough to talk to us for a while about, Matt Arts, who some of you know, and who is very effective in his use of social media. Talk to us a bit about, so Matt, you'll be happy to see these square images that you talked about. I don't know if you can zip through the next 4, Elizabeth,
Yep.
to show. So this is basically the content of the PDF put into something that could be featured as an Instagram post. Again, this was as much for us in the class, I think, or for the idea of the class was just to get students reading a lot of these case studies, to think about how do you effectively communicate the value of an anthropological approach to different kinds of audiences. And I think the outcome also, when they proposed prototypes like this one, they were able to use some of their thinking about design and really apply their own tastes, which I was reminded again and again are different than a 50-something-year-old guy like me. And in that those students are the people we're looking to meet, to reach. I think it was a great chance for them to exercise some of their creativity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jade now, who will talk a bit about the students' perspective.
Andrew, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thanks. So this project was a really unique opportunity for myself and the class, and I think that everybody in the class really got a lot out of the project, and a lot more than they might have originally anticipated getting from the project as well. So that was very exciting. And I think a key component of what we got out of it as students came down to the structure of the process and kind of what the goals were in terms of providing something for the commission as well. So connection was a huge opportunity in this project. And I think that it was a fairly unique one as well in terms of thinking about a class scale project, because collaboration is in a group setting is not always the easiest thing in a university setting, but I think it went over really well. And I think that opportunity to connect a lot closer with the course materials and the case reports in this project was a huge factor in making it successful as well. So the connection kind of came from the obviously this project is quite close to the students in terms of what we are looking forward to doing at the other end of our degree. We're all looking at graduating at this point. It is a 4th-year capstone course, so we're starting to look forward about what we're planning on doing afterwards. So being able to engage with material that is reflective of what we're all going to be potentially doing afterwards, I think really helped the class want to engage with this project. And I think it also is the reason we got so much out of it. The discussion and collaboration portions of this project were also, I find, quite unique. And I think they were part of the success in having the class get some value out of the project and not just it being a mark at the other end of a project. I think that the collaboration is a huge skill that is very useful when we're moving into a professional career. And I'm not always sure that we get that opportunity in a lot of our courses. So thinking forward for the future, it would be an excellent style project to incorporate in future capstone courses, just because of that collaborative component. It was a really unique project in that we were able to kind of go off on our own and synthesize readings in a different way than is expected in other courses, and then come back and not just individually contribute pieces towards a project, but then engage with each other and help each other with that learning experience. And that just was a really, really unique opportunity for us. And it was, I think, a huge reason that this project was so successful for the class, and why the class was so engaged in making this project kind of come out the other side in a successful way for the commission.
Thank you, Jade. Yeah, and I'll just say a brief word. I did have a chance to go to London, and it was absolutely stunning to see the students present. No notes, stood up there in front of the class, looked at the PowerPoints, which, you know, were not covered with words, but just had the appropriate amount of words, delivered the message to me and to the other people in the class, and absolutely astounding delivery of the material that they had been able to read and analyze, discuss, and so on. So it was, from my standpoint, it was a tremendous experience. Ryle, did you want to say anything about it?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I thought it was great too. And I wanted to sort of just say briefly what I think it lies ahead for this kind of approach. We were really curious to see what a student group would come up with. We were delighted with what they found. And the reason we think these examples are important is because we believe that helping students work their way through these examples gives them a very clear idea of how anthropology is actually used. Not how it could be used or how it should be used, but how it is used, how it has been used. And when they then get in front of a supervisor, a colleague at work, a client, they are able to, as it were, articulate very clearly, here's what we can do. Here's an example of how we did that. And I think that is going to be really important for students. And I'd go even further. As this project developed, I started thinking about the lack of fit or the amount of fit between what we do as anthropology instructors and what law school professors do. And the way a lot of legal programs work is that they throw students into case law. And if you think about that, they get given a legal problem to look at. And from that, they derive the legal principles, whereas a lot of us are doing it the other way around. We're talking theoretically about things and not actually taking that second step, whereas the law students get right into it. And here's a lawsuit, and here's what that showed you about the legal system. So I think in the future that as we identify more of these examples of the use of anthropology, we can use them in that same way as sort of case law for people and say, what does this tell us about how anthropologists work? What anthropological principles came into play here? How did the methods work in this case? And doing it that way kind of fits with the approach that we say we use in collecting data, which is very inductive. In other words, ground truth first and then theory later. So I'll leave it at that, but I really liked this exercise, and I would like to do it again with other schools and other students, and maybe get some discussion going at SFAA or AAA sometime. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryle, and thanks again to Andrew and Jade. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I just have a quick build on what Ryle was saying.
Yes.
I teach in a business school and we use cases also. The case approach in business is a little bit different. In this case, no pun intended, students will read about a company, told usually in a folksy way, that is stymied by something. They have some kind of problem. They don't even know for sure what the problem is. And then the business school students are charged with figuring out what's happening and how the problem can be solved. And later on, really toward the end, the professor will then say, well, so here's what happened. And so in some ways, it's very different from this approach, because the approach we're talking about in these examples is, here's how some anthropologists solved a problem. And that's great. I think it's a really good way of approaching the educational process for students. But for students who have some training in anthropology, to be presented with a situation and then start to figure out how they might use anthropological ideas, methods, and theories to address the problem, that's another way at it. So
Yeah,
the
I
student's charged with
understand.
solving it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Bob. That's a really good point, and that's something that we could also try to think about for a future project.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Could I make a brief build, or you need to go on?
Go ahead, Melissa, if you have a quick
I
comment.
mean, I also do something where I have a case study in my classes, but I have the students do a case study over time. So each class, I have them attempt to do it from a different part on the same company. And then I'm always drawing in both, like, not just anthropology, but these are organizational theory and practice and assessment classes. So I have them always draw in something what they would do, but it's always very strategic. And I find that it's like a case study, but over like 7 or 8 weeks, right? And then a final project.
I see. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, now we're going to move on to the project at University of Delaware that happened this semester. And Suana is going to tell us about it.
Elizabeth, you have frozen up on my screen.
Oh.
Anybody else seeing that?
Mine too.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Oops. Ryle, can you hear me?
Okay. Wait, Elizabeth's
I
back.
think she's coming back. Yeah.
Sorry, my computer decided to do updates.
Oh, no. Thanks.
I
to
tell you.
Melissa.
All right, can you see my screen or no?
No, we're in full gallery mode now.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Okay.
All right, now I think we're back in business. Okay, Suana, can you tell us about the project?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suana Crowley, and I'm here on behalf of my colleague, Carla Garon Montero, whom I worked with over the course of the fall semester at the University of Delaware. I'm sorry Jen Trivedi is not with us, but it would be fun to also get her take as another one of Carla's colleagues at the University of Delaware. So I'm coming to you as the applied half of this duo that undertook a class in the anthropology department, Anthropology 375. And this was stemming from a request to the commission regarding looking for an applied anthropologist or somebody outside the academy with some specialized training to look at the course Peoples and Cultures of Modern Latin America. So based on that request for seeking a practitioner, I answered a call for volunteers and connected with Carla, offering my expertise in environmental sciences and archaeology, and also digital media and science communications. So we began working in August to prepare for a course at the University of Delaware through the fall. And this was a course that was taken up by 19 students at the undergraduate level. The focus was on the peoples and cultures of modern Latin America. So there was a very traditional component of readings and case studies being presented. But the main focus of the class was to have the students produce podcasts based on sort of problems and discussions inside of the class space about climate justice and climate change, particularly affecting modern Latin American cultures and states. And so this was a very unique opportunity to engage undergraduates with the process of really looking deeply at anthropological materials and also translating what they were learning into a piece of content, a podcast. Many of them had never tried their hand at writing and producing a podcast. And so these groups came together, 7 groups total over the course of the semester. And Carla was able to gather additional expertise through the Morris Library on the production process, as well as incorporating Spanish translation, which was another primary goal of the syllabus, to have the students be able to create these podcasts and also have them translated and offered to partners that they had sought out for interviews and other information within Latin America. So, as I said, 7 groups of students connected with climate justice organizations within Latin America. There were some successes in that space. There were some challenges and some hurdles over the period of time of a semester, trying to connect with nonprofit and very small grassroots organizations internationally. Some students were more successful in securing responses and interviews. Others faced challenges and had to create really novel workarounds for that in achieving the end project of the podcast. Each podcast ended up going through a couple of iterations with comments and reviews, and final products ended up being about 10 minutes in length. So for my part, I attended 2 different class sessions in person of the Anthropology 375 class, and was able to offer some external perspective on the work that the students were doing, particularly with respect to topics that are close to my heart in terms of climate science, from the perspective of geoarchaeology and archaeology and earth sciences, but also on the perspective of talking in terms of content creation and narrative development and storytelling, and being able to do anthropology in a way that is communicating these rich details, these thick descriptions through very consumable, useful, transferable pieces of content like podcasts. So we were able to really coordinate and communicate with the class. I was able to be there in cyberspace through email, through LinkedIn contact and other forms of assistance to the class, while Carla was able to manage the class and its regular schedule in person. We did have a really great wrap-up session just before the final products of the podcast themselves were produced, to really talk about some of the practicalities that come into play when producing content like this. We got into a long discussion about advising on copyright and Creative Commons licensing to protect the work of the students. We talked a little bit about the connections made with the grassroots organizations and what their expectations might be as outside parties to this project, what obligations the students had to them in sharing authentic voices and stories from their organizations. And also, we had a really unique opportunity to talk with the students and feedback about taking this traditional lecture course, 3-credit lecture course, and considering the option for an additional 4th credit for a lab credit, to really start thinking about a sort of a laboratory of learning specifically for the production of something like the podcast. Taking time out from a student schedule to learn from the library resources and some of the other expertise that Carla had gathered was additional work, I think, that strained the students in some ways. And so thinking about building a lab credit into this as an opportunity to really fully explore those practical skill sets the students had to develop in order to complete the project was really quite a good idea. One of the other things that I added to the class is really expressing to them in reviewing their projects and in speaking to them directly, thinking about this project as something that's not just doing anthropology, not just embedding their learning in a very specific kind of knowledge that can be carried outward through various kinds of careers, but also in a very practical sense that they were building skills in real time, in the moment, as they were learning how to create a podcast, learning how to do the interviewing, learning how to project manage their own small teams and keep themselves on deadline. for producing this content. And so I've been in an advisory role to really say, don't forget to, this is fodder for your resume. Don't forget to think about this for LinkedIn. And don't forget to think about this as part of a really special work portfolio that you will graduate with, some very unique kinds of pieces that you can offer up to future employers or research partners. So the small experiment of partnering with an outside the Academy applied anthropologist, I think has been a really fun collaboration for Carla and me both. We are talking about going on to produce an article to sort of summarize these observations and takeaways. We're going to continue talking to the students about opportunities to publish these podcasts. I think it would be really nice for those students to have an opportunity to share that out in a very concrete way, to recognize their work and to create a nice digital data point that perhaps future hiring managers can call upon to see what kind of work that they do. And also, what has been especially nice for me as somebody coming from my own consulting perspective and doing my own work outside the Academy was a warm invitation from the University of Delaware to come in as a visiting scholar, to sort of give me some access to the resources of the university, to then help share out and support what the students might have needed, or just different ways for me to connect with materials that they could get their hands on. I could be at a more equal footing with them to discuss and to help explore different kinds of resources and avenues. So I think that this as an experiment was very interesting. I know that Carla is taking this to her department and talking about ways to improve, ways to maximize the experience for students with intention of possibly launching this again in 2023 or early 2024. But I think as a wonderful case study for the commission, the University of Delaware is really moving in quite special directions. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for academics and outsiders like myself to help demonstrate some really good opportunities for learning at the undergraduate level. So thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate your work and everything that the students did. I look forward to hearing some of the podcasts. We have one more class project. This one will take place next semester, and Christina Collins will talk about it just a bit. And if anyone has any comments for any of our speakers, please put them in the chat. Christina, please take it away. Oops, Christina not there? Let's see. Oh no, her baby just woke up. All right, so let me quickly go back and talk about this. She has a business anthropology course that she'll be teaching with underclassmen. These students will basically do research on other students to try to understand how they think about what their major is or should be, what kinds of skills they think they might need to enter the workforce, what their advisors and others at the university think about how ready they might be for the workforce, and basically, you know, people's perceptions around all of those questions. So the thought was to use unstructured and semi-structured interviews along with field note diaries that they would keep and surveys. And so that's essentially what Christina is thinking. Like I said, please put any comments that you might have in the chat, and we can then share them with her at a later point. And now we're going to move on to the next area of focus for today's meeting, with the anthropologists on the public stage. And Adam Gamwell is here to talk with us about it. You'll notice the QR code. If any of you are interested, just put your phone up close to your laptop and you can take a picture of it. You can also do it on the next slide, and that should bring you right to the website, which is called anthrocurious.com. Adam?
Right on. Thanks for inviting me to join today, Elizabeth, and good
Sure.
to see many familiar and friendly faces here, and good to see some new folks as well. So my name is Adam Gamble, and I am a business and design anthropologist and also a media producer. And I work in a number of different areas, but primarily in commercial and consumer research and innovation with technology and doing media production work. And the idea behind this series was that I think many of us are familiar with, and this is also why the Career Readiness Commission exists, is because we have a lot of passion about helping folks that dedicate themselves to understanding the world to have more of an impact on it. And there's an ongoing issue that a lot of us see, that basically there's a lack of public visibility around anthropology and anthropologists doing publicly visible work. And so in this case, we were able to get a little bit of a scrappy grant from the Winter Grant Foundation, and then a team of 5 of us over the past 2 years, which is a long time, did a series of interviews with a number of luminaries of folks that are just doing public anthropology and bringing these ideas to the public in important and big ways. And so across doing this series of interviews, we then put our anthropological hats on and pulled together some themes that we're seeing across the stories and interviews that we were collecting. And the idea here is just to kind of bring out some of the stories and techniques and skills that we often don't get in school. This is, one of the themes I think we've been talking about with these class projects too. Is it's really cool to see some synergies here, and asking ourselves, how can we make these more accessible, more visible, and easier for folks to have pathways to have more public impact in their work. And so, we interviewed a number of folks, including like Julian Tett at the Financial Times, Helen Fisher, who's a biological anthropologist and TED Talks All-Star, which means her TED Talks have over 10 million views. She's also one of the pioneers of making internet dating into a science. And she worked with Match.com for many years. Faye Harrison, Paul Stoller, who blogs at Huffington Post, Psychology Today. And then a number of folks here that are on our call with us today. So exciting to see Suana and Bob, Melissa Fisher, and Ed Lebo here. Have also contributed to the series. So we're really excited to be able to share these with y'all. And so the goal here is that we frame these into 6 modules. They're basically a self-directed course that you can take, on your own pace. They're free. And the idea here is to give us this this foundation of how we can understand what skills we have, what ideas we have to bring to the table, and in what ways we can bring them and to be more strategic and tactical about how we can do that. So the way we broke these down is around this first idea of developing an idea worth sharing, which is helping us understand that anthropologists have the stories. It's just about learning how to tell them to the right audience, using the right mediums, and thinking about how we're putting out that content. Connecting with the media is all about connecting with journalists in local newsrooms and understanding how to pitch a story, which is a different way of thinking than most of us write as anthropologists in school. Number 3, even Suana just mentioned this too. This is a very important part about how do we tell a story well, right? It's one of the key fundamentals that is an important part of getting people interested and keeping them hooked and what can come next. Then we also got a number of really interesting stories, including from Melissa Fisher here, around influencing policy development, in an area that oftentimes anthropologists don't think about going into, but we could definitely use more anthropologists on the political stage, as it were. Increasing public awareness is all around the idea of the ways that we can bring our stories out onto the public stage. This could be videos and podcasts, so these different kinds of content, but also things like performances, staging civic design events, and writing, fiction books, blogs, many different kinds of formats. So kind of breaking down those options there. Then promoting yourself in anthropology, this really interesting framework of what else we can learn from adjacent fields for promoting ourselves, like science communication, like advertising and marketing and public relations. So again, it's a super exciting series, and we're excited to finally have it out after two and a half years of making it. So we encourage you to check it out. And The series, as you can see themselves, the videos range from 9 minutes to 22. So we made them as digestible and short as possible, so they can work well in classrooms, as well as then for individual use. And each of the videos has an exercise that you can download with it in a PDF for helping develop your ideas, framing up a story, how to research journalists that you might want to pitch a story to, how to think about policy relevant issues from your work, things like this. So the idea here is to kind of help take the ideas from the videos, from luminaries, and then make them digestible and actionable to folks. So thanks for your few minutes, and we hope you check out the series and let us know what you think.
Thank you, Adam. Great. Okay, now we just have a very quick slide on volunteers. We need some volunteers. And the reason why is because we are in the process of developing a new media plan so that all of our communications will be planned in advance, put on a calendar, and then posted. This is something that we've been thinking about for a while, but we are now ready to engage. So we're looking for 4 people to help out with us. Ideally, if there are students who would have an interest in this, that would be great. And I say that because students seem to know a lot more about posting than some of us of a different age do or ever will. So it would be great for students, but we will take anybody. So we're looking for 4 people. If one of you or more of you are on this call today, please indicate that in the chat. We would really appreciate it. We can't do it all by ourselves, and we do need helpers. I don't think it's terribly hard. I think I could actually do some of this too, but anyway, that's the call. And next up, I'm going to talk very briefly about the website. We have been getting feedback for a while now that our website is not as student friendly as it could be. And so we're just at the very, very beginning stages of saying that out loud to ourselves. And ideally, we would like to pull together a small group of people that could help us think through some of the ways in which it might be structured in a different way. But before we even get to that, I wanted to show you all that we now have a modified logo. We have added the word anthropology, '(S), to the logo. We did this for 2 reasons. The first was that this summer with our UX project that was done as part of an internship, we learned that students weren't connecting career readiness specifically with anthropology. And then a second reason was because we've noticed that even among some of us, as we would talk about the commission's work, we would often throw the word anthropology in as in the description of the Career Readiness Commission. So we just decided to cut to the chase, and this is now the modified logo. So back to some of the input that we have received so far. Got many different sources of input, some in response to questions that we posed at presentations, some from anonymous instructors who would share it with another person who would then share it with us. We know that we've had low usage or lower than expected usage of our resources repository. We had the preliminary UX study of the website, and then we got really good feedback, specifically from Rob Winthrop, who's here today. So that's one set of information. Then in terms of, well, what does the website have now? Well, it basically what it seems to have is a structuring that is suitable for, you know, an organization like ours to just keep track of all of our stuff, rather than something that would be very useful and targeted at our primary audience, which is students. And so then the question became, well, how do we address these issues? And one suggestion by people in our resources group was, well, let's just do a more formal UX study. So I in the last newsletter, I made this as I suggested this as a possibility, and I did get 4 or 5 people that responded, but no one who had the capacity to actually lead the project. And so then we thought, well, all right, let's try Plan B. And the Plan B was basically to take a very serious look at what we know from the input we have, and then try to create a draft structure that people can then react to, and then we would do a more formal evaluation at a later date. So that was our thought process, rightly or wrongly. And this is essentially what we have come up with as a draft in terms of how it might be restructured. This is not final by any stretch of the imagination, but please put your comments in the chat if something occurs to you. Let me just say briefly that the first 4 blocks in blue are areas that would be targeted completely at students. And under them, we would incorporate things like links or actual resources or the one-page tools or whatever might be appropriate. The blog would still have its own special place on the website. And then everything that is now part of Commission Resources would essentially remain as it is. And we would target, adapting that as the Commission continues to evolve. So that's what we're thinking right now. Happy to take any comments, and just to give you an idea about what might be covered in each of these categories or each of these tabs. I've listed down some possible subcategories or topics, resource areas to which we might add materials. If anybody has a very quick comment that they would like to make verbally, I think we have about a minute or so for people to do that, or if you prefer, just keep your stuff in the chat.
I had one quick suggestion.
Yes.
Based on the success that we all have had with our efforts to sort of encourage student projects, right, in
Okay.
various places.
Yep.
Not as a substitute for ourselves doing this work, but rather as an additional sort of a way to do this. This would lend itself to a certain kind of student project, if you think about it. I can see a way that you could involve students in constructing a website. And I don't mean the technical aspects. I mean the categories and the arrangements. And I can talk more about that later. I don't want to take up time right now, but
Sure.
I've done a couple of things like this with students, and I can see how this could lend itself to a 2 or 3 week project with students.
Okay, great. All right, and then a couple of other updates. First up is, if you know of people right now, students or recent graduates who are looking for work, we have 3 possible opportunities for them to consider. First is for a postdoc researcher. This would be at Purdue University. I worked with these people for 6 years. They are great. They're interested in qualitative research. They publish like crazy. And it would be absolutely terrific for someone who is looking for a postdoc. Second, Radiant Digital, which is does user experience research, has Verizon as a client. They are looking to basically train an intern and move that intern from an internship into a full-time employee. Both of these are for immediate openings. So in other words, if you know of anyone who might be interested in either of these two, we have to move fast, like yesterday, in other words. So, you know, spread the word. I have the job descriptions, happy to send them to you if you contact me after the meeting. And then the third one, they are looking for multiple summer interns who are bachelor or master's students at Milwaukee Tool. Milwaukee Tool is in Wisconsin. It is the company that Claire Sigworth, who did our logo, works for. This would be a paid position. They provide a stipend for moving, and they find you very reasonable housing. So it would be a 3-month internship. And I'm going to guess that you're going to work with Claire for part of it. They're also, you know, advertising with other organizations. So again, if you know of students looking for internships, this might be a really very cool opportunity. And then the last slide I have for you today is about blogs. We would love a blog post from any instructor who has used one of our tools. And then you can also see that we have some upcoming posts that will be published. You know, they come out every 2 weeks. They run between 500 and 750 words, and they are all related to careers or career prep. So those of you who have not yet submitted a blog post, we would welcome your contributions. And you would contact Priscilla Lynn. Her email is right down at the bottom, and we will post this slide deck after the meeting is over. Our next meeting will be February 19th in the new year, and you will get a newsletter in January describing where we're at in terms of the commission's work. So I think it's 5:01. We are 1 minute over. I apologize for that. I like to end on time, but so delighted that you all were here today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Please spread the word about all that we're trying to do, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Elizabeth. So what did you think, Ryle? It was kind of fast, and I got messed up in the beginning there with the
No, you recovered.
several minutes. Yeah.
Well, no, you recovered very quickly. I was going to send you a text, and then I realized I didn't have my phone. It's in the car. And so I was saying to other people, you probably couldn't hear any of this, but we were all going, can you hear her? No, can you hear her? No, she's frozen. What do we do? So then Bob Murray says, well, send her a text. I said, yeah, okay. And then I looked around and thought, oh shit, I don't have my phone. All this was going on in real time, you know, back and forth. And Bob says, well, I'll send her a text. And then you came back on. So So we were all working hard to get you back.
Yeah,
No,
I know.
that was very good. I will send you a thought tomorrow about how we might get that website design incorporated into somebody's class project.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is this. Website design, I don't ever do it. I don't have a website, but I've watched people, I've listened to you and Matt and everybody, you know, talking about it. And I've got a lot of colleagues who have websites. And I mean, it's partly technical and it's partly artistic.
Right.
And there are people who combine those two things,
Mhm.
but often you get either into the technical weeds real quick with certain people, you know, and you don't ever get out again, or you get sort of a, well, it'd be nice to have this and this and this and this and this. And it's a sort of an artistic vision, which cannot be easily translated technically into an actual website. So we can do this because we've got smart people, and by now we know a lot more about what we want to put on the website. But
Right.
one of the things that we might want to do, in addition to everything else, is ask the people who are actually going to use the website.
Yeah, right,
How would they do it?
right.
And I think it would be worth talking a little bit about that with an instructor before we go around encouraging somebody to do it, because
Yeah,
I think if we didn't write a pretty specific scope of work and actually some strong hints about procedure and methodology, we might get nothing useful back. And I don't
Right.
want to do that because these student projects so far have been extremely successful.
Yeah.
And I do think that, trusting to their creativity, that's worked out for us. But with
Yeah.
this, we might want to think about, so how would we want to do this? And, because they're the ones that have the questions in their minds. I think that's the hard part of it, is eliciting from students. So what do you want to know exactly? What would bring you to a website like this in the first place?
Yeah.
We know that they have a lot of anxiety about jobs,
Right,
that they have a lot of, I wouldn't call it an inferiority complex, but they look around and they go, well, the lawyers and the business guys and the engineers all seem to have all this cool stuff, and we don't have any of that. We don't know how to do that.
yeah,
So there's things that that would bring them to a website, it seems to me. And I don't want to get too far into figuring that out for people, because I'm
Yeah.
not really sure anymore, but you
Right.
see stuff like that. So if an instructor could work with students first and say, so what's on your mind? In other words, what is it that the analogy that comes to my mind, and we might get somebody like Bob Moray or Tim Malafite into this at some point.
mhm.
It's almost like advertising.
Yeah, it
Right.
is.
You've got a new kind of dog food that you want to sort of, so you think to yourself, how do we sell this to dog food people? How
Yeah.
do people with dogs? What are they looking for? What do they want? And then we can present, or we can design our product so that it responds to that. That's what we're looking for.
So
And
we,
so it isn't like, oh, we should have a website and it should have this, and this. That's the way we do stuff, but that's not the way advertisers do stuff. At least I
Right.
don't think. You see
right,
what I mean?
I hear what you're saying, and I think we just have to find someone. I can go down through our list and see who might be a good person, unless you have someone in mind.
Well, like I said, I think that before we get too far along with it, I didn't mean, I threw it out impulsively because I thought, well, that's the first thing that occurred to me, was we could get students to help us with this. The how is important. I think before we look for people, why don't we talk to the people that we know and like? And I was thinking of Bob
Yeah,
and Tim, because
Okay.
they're in the business.
sure,
And we're not asking them to do it for us. We're not even asking them
Right.
to, but we're sort of saying, does this make sense to involve the users in a design? And is there an analogous process that people go through in advertising to do this? I would imagine there is. Focus groups is probably the way they start, because that's the way they do a lot of stuff.
yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think that Christina, if her project were further along, but of course it hasn't even started yet, she might be ideal for this, but she does not appear to be interested in doing focus groups. So I think we need somebody else.
Well, I think we could do some of the focus group and say, look, there's a lot of different ways to do this. One way is to get an entire class to do it. And if you do that, you're going to have a hard time, it seems to me, finding an instructor who says, well, I have 6 weeks free in my class.
Yeah, right,
Nobody does, right? And it's going to be like this. What we could do instead, and I'm not, again, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I mean,
Yeah.
suppose they said, yeah, the way they do this is they start with focus groups, and from that they develop kind of, a vision of how, I don't know. So if focus groups would be one of the things, then you and I can do the focus groups.
Yeah, right,
We
okay.
don't have to do them with a specific class.
No, right, it could just be a mix of students.
We could just put a thing in the SFA newsletter or something and say, we're gonna do focus groups. If you're interested in participating in this, get in touch with Ryle or Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And we'll make a decision by March 20th about who's,
Right.
you know, and we set up, you do a group of 6, I do a group of 6, and we compare
Mhm.
notes. That's it, simple.
Yeah.
And from that point on, we at least know what 12 students thought.
Yeah, right. And don't forget, we do have comments from Cody's study this summer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so we have some baseline, which is why I felt comfortable enough to put those categories out there. Now, I'm not saying they're going to stay,
Yeah.
but and I like your approach to, you know, to kind of refine and figure out what's what. So I'm perfectly content going down that road.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, we could do that. That would not take that long.
I mean, more data is never a bad thing. And if you
Yeah.
don't like the data, you throw it away. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
you say, okay, fine, we won't use that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah,
All right, very good. Well, great. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. I have some
Okay.
other things to talk to you about. Nothing bad.
great.
But yes. All right.
All right, super. Have a good
Good.
evening.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Bye.